Hey folks, it's Eko here. Today we're going to be talking about the early game in Undead Legacy. When I got started with this mod pack, there wasn't a lot on the internet, so I did 3 or 4 runs up through day 8, and this is what my base looked like at the end of the last run. On each run, I was utilizing things that I had learned from the prior, and that's what I'm going to put together and share with you now. Additionally, at the end, I'll do a run through of the different workstations and the order that I think you should approach them. Let's jump right on in. For step 5 of the starter quest, you're going to need to gather 30 scrap iron. The best way to do this is to find an iron node on the map, get 6 of these, and then scrap them. Assuming you've grabbed the rest of the materials, you'll be able to easily craft your log table, and then your first carpenter's table. You're going to need to quickly place it to be able to finish the quest, but then don't forget, hold down E while looking at it, and you'll be able to pick it right back up and take it with you. In regards to perk allocations, some of the oldies but goodies still work well here. Strength and intellect play very well in Undead Legacy. Specifically, this game is very grindy in terms of resource allocation or gains. So, you know, good old Miner 69er and Motherlode are going to be really critical for you to gather your resources later on in the game. And of course, the other perks here play very well. I still highly recommend Pummel Pete as a focus in terms of combat. The club plays extremely well in the early game, but in terms of initial allocation, when you get those first 4 points, I'm going to give you kind of 2 routes that you can go based off of my experience here. One is to put a point into strength and a point into sexy Rex, just so you have a little bit more sustainability in battle, and then to put 1 point in intellect and 1 point in daring adventurer, so that you can get those extra quest reward options right off the bat and make sure that you get the best choice possible. Alternatively, the other route which I went, I did the Daring Adventure and Int second. Before that, I went into Agility and put 1 point here and 1 point into Hidden Strike. And that just allows you to use the bow and do one-shot headshots as you're going through the first few quests. And that definitely speeds up the process because the zombies can be a little bit spongy in this, or at least it feels that way to me. As soon as you get your hands on a wrench, I would also highly recommend putting in a point into salvage operations, just because you can get a massive amount of scrap iron from cars and other such items. Undead Legacy provides a more robust way of character progression, and one of the ways they do this is, in addition to perks, you also have skills, and this harkens back to kind of the older alphas in 7 Days to Die, where you actually had to do an action in order to progress in it. So you can see kind of the areas that I focused on: bows, animal harvesting, weightlifting, clubs. So as you use the club more, you're going to gain experience from it. And then when you hit these gates, you will unlock additional abilities. So at 20, level 20 in clubs, I will get my 5% damage, my 10% headshot damage, and then my extra damage to stun targets. These skills typically were in the perk associated with the weapon, so this would have been in Pummel Pete, but they've shifted it over to here, and then Pummel Pete is going to have a separate set of perks associated with it. So these skills you'll all level up, and you can also find books out in the world that will help you level these skills. And then one other key attribute for this is that these skills can also reduce. Each time you die, these will go down. So that is a huge penalty in Undead Legacy for death. So this brings us to another critical tip. So one of the interesting things on Undead Legacy is that the zombies lose interest in you much closer or much faster than they did typically. So if you find yourself in a scenario where you've got a bunch of these ferals and you're just feeling overwhelmed, one of my recommendations is to find a corner, run, and see if you can duck around it, sprint for a little bit, and just like that, we've lost them. No shame in living to fight another day. Undead Legacy has some nice quality of life items, and one of the things that I like is that it shows the durability of your weapon in the bottom right, which leads me to my next tip, and that is to carry a spare. Because you're going to run into this situation where it says this item needs repair, and you're not going to have a secondary weapon sitting there. Additionally, if you do have to repair it after combat, you come back in here, you're going to need a repair kit. Specifically for even the primitive items, you're going to need a primitive repair kit, which is this guy here, which you would think, yeah, well, I can just make one of those out in the field. I just go in here and look up primitive repair kit, and It says I can craft it in my backpack. All I have to have is some stone, which is easy to find, and branches, and a rope. And here we runs into the problem. So rope is not easily findable and must be crafted in a carpenter's table. So this will lead me to my next tip. Always carry a bunch of primitive repair kits. These are really cheap. So they're pretty easy to make. You just need to be at your carpenter's table to do so, and they weigh very, very little. So 0.01, so you could carry 100 of those if you wanted. So I recommend making a stack of those to carry with you. There's a few interesting characteristics about trader outposts now. They're completely reworked, but in addition to that, you're going to have your standard trader that you would have. So in this case, we've got good old Trader Bob, but in addition to that trader, you're also going to have a secondary trader that's in a different location in each of them. So in this case, we've got another trader up here, Trader Logan, and he will have a secondary set of gear that you can check out and purchase from.
Farewell.
Additionally, I highly recommend that you look around the bases and explore, because in addition to normal loot that you can find, each one of these is going to have a munitions box tucked away somewhere in the outpost. So look for those to get some early game weapons and ammunition. So building an Undead Legacy is much more complicated and takes a long time to get blocks actually put together, so it's unlikely that you're going to have a Horde base in the first week. My recommendation is find a POI that's near a trader. This one was perfect for me. I found this little trailer here, and if you can throw a few ladders on the side, or in this case it already had a nice little jumping puzzle to get up on the top, because the nights are really harrowing in Undead Legacy, unlike vanilla. There's a lot of pharaohs out there, and just the number of zombies tend to be higher, and with your early gear, it can be really rough out there. So I recommend setting up a setup like this, where you can start to collect cardboard boxes and stuff like that and organize the loot that you find over the day, and then you can spend the night up here during the week organizing and crafting and upgrading and things like that. Storing all your stuff is going to be a little bit of a challenge, as if you look, the most basic wooden storage crate takes a carpenter's table tier 2 to even make, and then once you have that put together, which does take quite a bit of materials, you're going to have all this other stuff in order to put that together. So as a result of that, typically, if you grab these cardboard boxes that are all around the map, these serve as great storage units, at least for early game. And then one thing, you can pick up the end loot crates, which are a little bit larger, but take heed of these. If you take a look at our stealth meter here, you'll notice how much it pops up and makes noise down the bottom, up to 46 when we click on the cardboard box, and then when we open these fragile boxes, boom, it pops all the way up to 86. So if you're talking about being stealthy around your base during nighttime while you're crafting and doing things, these are not the way to go. When you're putting together your base area, make sure that you keep your storage close to your crafting stations. And the reason for this is they've added in this awesome feature called broadcast storage for crafting. So up here, you're going to want to click this button on each of your boxes. You'll see that's grayed out, so it's not active. But once it is active like that, when you come over to any of your workstations, you're going to see in the top right, it's going to say nearby storage, and it's going to say how many are close by. And for the purposes of crafting, it's going to pull materials from all of those, so you don't have to go and pick up all the stuff you need for crafting. So in this situation, I've got a wood storage box here requiring planks and scrap iron and nails, and I don't have any of that or the hinges in my inventory, but because it's in local boxes contained in these near storage, I can craft this without having to pick them up, which is a huge bonus in saving time in terms of inventory management. Before you toss a mod that might be a duplicate, make sure you double check it, because in Undead Legacy, you'll see that there can be variation. So we've got one Gravedigger mod here with a 5%, and then we've got another with a 5.8%. Additionally, one thing of note that won't come into play in the early game, but will over the course of your play, is that mods also have different tiers. So if you've seen with some of the other items, they start with H and then go all the way up G, F, E, D, and etc. until all the way up to S tier. And as they increase, you'll see the amount of effect that mod has will also increase. This gives you just another level of granularity in terms of upgrading items. As soon as you start getting scrap items, I recommend building a maintenance station. This has two functions that it serves. One is for repair purposes. If I look at the scrap machete, and what is it repaired with? It's repaired with a repair kit. Well, in order to make a repair kit, you're going to see it costs all these materials. So these are very expensive and really meant to be just used in the field for repairs. Otherwise, you're best served to build these or to do your repairs at your maintenance station. So once you're here, rather than all those materials, I can come and put my machete in here, and you're talking only 3 iron to repair. So that's pretty significant. Additionally, your maintenance station is going to be how you upgrade weapons, which is one of the awesomest features that they added in here. So you can come in here into the upgrade portion, and it's going to give you a list of upgrade costs to bring your weapon or armor from one tier up to the next tier. And it's going to have a chance upgrade. So as this goes higher up the tier ladder, it's going to, decrease the percentage chance that you're successful. So take note, because in the early game, once you hit certain levels, it's going to start requiring data, which is very, very valuable in the early game. In addition to the large number of workstations that you also have tiers of workstations. So one of your first ones that you're going to build is the carpenter's table. And as I was going to build my bat, I had found my schematic and I went to build it, and I hopped in here and I realized, hey, I can't actually build a bat because it requires a tier 2 carpenter's table. Well, upgrading this also wasn't super obvious, but if you come up to a table and hold down E, in addition to taking it, you can also do upgrade. So here it's going to give you all the necessary tools, all the necessary pieces that you're going to need to upgrade it. So take note of this one. The big one for this one's the carpenter's axe, because that's a challenging one to make. And then once you upgrade it, you'll have the tier 2. And then of course, once you're in the tier 2, same scenario, you can go upgrade here, and it's going to give you a new set of items that you're going to require to be able to upgrade it. Additionally, one of the other differences between the two is that you're going to see that some items that you make are going to reduce in cost. Not everything, but if we go up here, take back out of the search, and we look at the bowstring, we'll see that it is 30 fiber and 8 resin, so 30 and 8, and we go check it here, and it's reduced to 27 and 7, and then on the last one, it is reduced to 24 and 6. So it has a few advantages other than just unlocking additional recipes that you can craft on that. And most of the workstations all have additional tiers beyond that. So same thing over here, even the workbench has, I believe, upgrades for it. So something for you to be aware of, most likely not going to happen in the first week. For early game weapon preference, I would not recommend going in with a knife. Now I'm playing on warrior setting, but you can see that they are just too damn spongy to do much of anything. And once you get attacked with multiples, you don't get a break like you do with the club. It at least knocks them back and gives you a reprieve. If you get really lucky and get the police baton, this is the ideal, because the knockback potential on this one is huge, and it puts them on their butt quite frequently. So if you find this, or even get luckier and come across a stun baton, these are really clutch at early game in Undead Legacy. So that is my preference choice. I would go for club, and then baton if you happen to find a police baton, and then the stun baton works really, really well. I would stay away from the sledges because you tend to run into crowds, especially if you have the wandering hordes cranked up, and that can be a little bit difficult. One of the other great features in Undead Legacy is that you can pick up nearly anything. So if you see a light out there that you like, specifically lanterns, you can take that and then use that for lighting your base. Likewise, since storage is difficult to build, my recommendation is when you find a cardboard box, you go ahead and take it, and that can become storage in your base. One of the aspects I love about Undead Legacy is how you can collect beverages from random areas. So you'll see this has a 0 out of 30 on it. That means this one's empty, but it could have up to 30 units of water in it. Same thing if you go to coffee. So as long as you either have an empty jar or an empty plastic bottle, you just walk right up to the device, hit E, and it's going to give you either a coffee or it'll give you one of these plastic bottles of coffee. But either way, you get yourself some coffee. So same thing with water. You should look out. You can also do this once you have the gas can when you see barrels sitting around and things like that. So just keep your eyes open for those. In Undead Legacy, the Master Chef perk has been removed, and instead you're going to have to go out and find the schematics for the recipes. Now that being said, bacon and eggs is available right off the gate. The only thing you're going to need here is a cooking pot, and then you can happily live breakfast all the time for that first week of gameplay. Gathering honey in Undead Legacy is a little bit different. Instead of a chance at getting honey from a stump, you're always going to get honeycomb. To make honey, you'll need to go to your campfire, and you're going to take that honeycomb that you found, and you will either need a plastic bottle or a empty jar and 5 pieces of honeycomb that you found, and then you can cook it right up. So there's definitely some upsides and downsides to the encumbrance system in Undead Legacy, but one of the advantages that I've learned is that since you're not worried about slots, you can carry a lot more meds. If you take a look at what the meds weigh, so recog's only 0.05, fort bites are 0.05, painkillers, first aid bandages, and then sugar butts, so your candy goes up to 0.1. It's not even until you get your first aid kit that they start to carry some decent weight. So there's no reason not to carry these. I will say that the splints and the casts weigh a little bit more, but still worth it to have those as just in case scenario. The other big one that I carry a lot of is steroids. So yeah, no reason not to have those now that they don't take up slots. Once you get your hands on a wrench, you want to keep your eyes out for things like transformers and have yourself a few blocks here you can pop onto because these have huge potential. You can get mechanical parts, steel plating, iron plating, and other goodies from this. Another good source of iron plating is weights. Another tip pulled back from vanilla is just to scrap cars that you see around the map, because specifically in Undead Legacy, this is probably the fastest way that you can get scrap iron. And of course, in addition to that, you have the chance to get engines and all the other good stuff that comes in cars. While we're on the top of the boxes, I recommend searching all of them because they actually can have some really good loot in them in this version. So even if they don't have good loot in them, the other advantage is that these break down for paper, which is going to be significantly important if you want to research new schematics and get those upgraded. One huge shift in Undead Legacy is that in order to get schematics, you're going to use a research station. This is something you're going to have to craft, and then once you do, you'll be able to upgrade it kind of like the other stations. Now, once you look in here and you want to make a schematic of something, so if I look at steel knuckles, you're going to see it's going to have the materials I need to craft it, and one of the materials is going to be data. So data is a resource that you attain by scrapping other schematics. That is your primary way of getting it. So each time you scrap a schematic, you're going to get 50 more data. So one of the things to do is look at either schematics that you're not likely to move into or use, or look at late game schematics that hopefully you can either research those later and so that you can use the data that you have now. So once you're in here, all you got to do is research and it will start crafting it just like any other item. And then when it's done, you'll be able to use that and be able to make those knuckles. When you're out looting, there's some specific things you're going to want to look for. Eventually, you're going to get to the disassembly station, and this has a huge potential for getting you data. So as you're running around the map, it's important that you see circuit boards, flashlights, laptops, monitors, computer keyboards, TVs, all this good stuff can break down into parts and pieces and give you good stuff once you're able to research and build the disassembly station. So I would capitalize on those earlier on because this data is going to be one of your huge bottlenecks for progressing your character forward. For your first Horde base, I recommend not overthinking things too much. Look for a building that is largely made out of stone, ideally one that has a stairwell that goes up to some type of second floor area like this. And this allows you the situation to build a very simple fighting position here. This will give some time for the zombies to cycle in and allow you to deal with them here. And for the first Horde night, this should hold up quite well. So you can sit here and just basically pummel them as they walk in. So here you can see the first few coming up, and you can easily just sit back and swing in them. If things get a little bit too hairy, you can take a break, step back, heal, and all that good stuff. But even if you get this upgraded to stone, you should be in pretty good shape, and that wasn't too hard for me to do. I kind of did this starting at day 6, just harvested a few trees and a little bit of stone and came up here and set this up. I was even able to upgrade some of the exterior portions to brick due to some pallets that I found outside. So those are some of the tips that I've collected for the early game. Let's talk about workstations for a second, because man, this is a complicated topic. Undead Legacy has about 15 different workstations, and I've got 12 of them here, and I've tried to order them as best as I could logically from top left down to bottom right in the order that I would recommend building them. Now, that being said, I've only played up through about day 8, so I might change my mind as I continue to play through the game, and I'll make sure to update with future videos on that. But for right now, the Carpenter Station is the first one you build for the starting quest. After that, the Research Station is the one that you're going to need to unlock all of your new schematics that you find. Maintenance Station is going to provide you the opportunity to upgrade your items as well as maintain them, keep them repaired without the high costs of repair kits. After that, the Artisan Table is mostly an unlock. You're going to need that to craft both the Furnace and the Blacksmith Forge, and those are your two key items. The Furnace is going to be able to smelt all of your ingots and stuff that you need, and then in a lot of cases you're going to take those ingots and you're going to put them in the Blacksmith Forge to be able to create plates and other things like that that you'll need to make other items in the game. The Mechanics Table is going to be critical if you want to actually build vehicles, repair kits, things along those lines, specifically oriented towards vehicles. The Workbench serves as a gating function to unlock the Disassembly Station, Cement Mixer, and Chem Station. So the Disassembly Station we talked about briefly in one of the tips and tricks earlier, but this is going to be something that can break down any item that says that it is recyclable. You'll see that if you look at the characteristics of an item, and those components will break down, and in addition you get data from that. So that's a really key station to play with. Then you've got the Cement Mixer, which is from good old vanilla. You've got the Chem Station, which is also from vanilla, and then the Tailor Station, which is used to craft armor and clothing and dyes and things along those lines. For any veterans of Undead Legacy, let me know if this ordering seems logical to you or if you would do this in a totally different fashion. So that's what I've got for today, folks. Mad props to Subquake for putting together an incredible mod for 7 Days to Die. I'm going to be honest, this might be the best mod that I've ever seen for 7 Days to Die. This is the way that I kind of want the game to play. The progression is slower and more even. It's more thoughtful. There's a lot more ways to customize and enjoy the game. So I hope this helped out anyone new to Undead Legacy, and if you have some additional tips and tricks, just drop them down in the comments so I can collect all those up. And otherwise, folks, I'm going to be doing a series on this coming up in the next month here, so look forward to that. I'll link that up above once it's available. But otherwise, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Eko's out.